This is getting out of control. The stock market keeps crashing. We thought that the crash is going to be temporarily, but it's getting worse and worse each by day. Nvidia is down, the S&P 500 is down, the Dow is down. Whatever stock you can think about is probably down. And I'm not even talking about Palantir that has been crushing by 30% over the last 3 months. So let's try to figure out what exactly is happening in the market that is pushing the stock market to panic and forcing all of these investors to sell most of their stocks, that's leading to a stock market crash. So let's go one by one. Around a month ago, on 1st of February, President Donald J. Trump imposed tariffs on 3 countries: Canada, Mexico, and China. Now, the goal was to force these countries to renegotiate trade deals that are more favorable to the United States. So the leaders of Canada and Mexico immediately flew to the United States in order to start the talks. However, China simply ignored them, and they said that they will simply retaliate to the United States by imposing similar tariffs. Now, they put these tariffs on hold for an entire month in order for them to come to an agreement. Imposing tariffs on Canada or Mexico is extremely fatal because both of these countries are deeply integrated within the United States economy. So when you're imposing tariffs on them, you are literally destroying most of their businesses. And that's why Trump was so confident by starting this trade war against both of these countries. It might be extremely difficult to do that against China, but against Mexico and Canada, it's not literally a big deal. When you're building a business, it's not an overnight thing. Building businesses takes years. So when you're imposing a 25% tariff, suddenly the goods that are coming from Canada and Mexico the price of those goods will increase by 25%. And you have to readjust and reinvent your entire business model, which is something that takes years. You cannot possibly do that in a couple of weeks. So they put the tariffs on hold for an entire month in order for them to come to a better agreement. And now a month has passed and they couldn't come to an agreement, and these tariffs are going to go into effect, which is exactly what is causing the market panic in the United States. Since Canada is much more economically dependent on the United States, most people imagine that Canada wouldn't retaliate. But if you look at their response recently in the last couple of days, but I would say just yesterday, you will be shocked. Because first of all, they retaliated by imposing a 25% tariff on $30 billion worth of products that are coming from the US. And the second round of these tariffs are going to be another 25% on the remaining $103 billion worth of products that will come from the United States. That is going to impact seriously a lot of businesses, because a lot of businesses, especially on the northern side of the United States, sell their goods to Canada, and now those prices are going to increase by at least 25%, which means that Canadian consumers are no longer going to buy them, or a smaller percentage of Canadian consumers will buy those products, which significantly can hurt American businesses. But Canada took it to a completely different level that most people wouldn't actually expect it. They might even take it to the level where they will stop the flow of oil and gas to the United States. Just for the context, 52% of all US oil comes from Canada. Now, from one perspective, it seems like a disaster because that could actually hurt US consumers. If the United States is not going to import all of that oil, how is it going to fuel its economy to move forward? However, if you dig into the numbers, you'll find out that it's not going to have such a serious consequences as, for example, cutting the Russian gas to the European Union. United States is a net exporter of oil and gas, and even though that it buys a lot of its oil from Canada, because Canada has mostly heavy oil and it has no other option but to sell it to the United States. Yes, United States is going to suffer to a certain extent, but the United States has the infrastructure in order to replace Canadian oil and start buying it from countries such as Middle East, such as United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, or whatever other countries are there in the Middle East. However, Canada does not have that option. If Canada stops the inflow of oil and gas to the United States, Canada will literally shoot itself in its knee because it's literally their biggest source of revenue and they have no other option but to sell it to the United States. Are they going to build those refineries, or are they going to build the entire infrastructure within the next couple of months? Which is why it is going to hurt Canada way more than it's going to hurt the United States. So Canadian leaders are trying to convince the European leaders in order to stand up with Canada and impose tariffs against the United States in order to slow down the United States and stop the trade war with Canada. It's also supposed to be like a major blow to China, because besides the 10% of tariffs that he put in the beginning, there is an extra 10% of tariffs, which brings them to a total number of 20%. But China got its lessons from the first trade war when Trump became the president the first time. They realized that they cannot possibly trust the United States, and they started to diversify their entire economy. And now United States represents a small percentage of something between like 12 to 15% of their entire exports. The rest of that exports goes to the rest of the world. So if you Google out the Chinese economy, you find out that China is heavily trading with Middle East, Africa, European Union, and Southeast Asia. So by imposing this 20% tariff on China, it's not going to have a really serious implication on the Chinese economy. Yes, those tariffs forced Canada and Mexico to immediately fly to the United States and start talking to Trump, but it's not going to have the similar impact in China. Guess what China did? China retaliated by imposing tariffs on American goods. Now, the first time back in the 2017 or 2018 during the first trade war, China was the largest buyer of the US soybeans. 70% of all the soybeans that the United States exported to the rest of the world came to China. But after imposing tariffs on American soybeans, American farmers lost a lot of their revenue. In fact, some of them went bankrupt, and the US government had to use taxpayer money in order to subsidize their soybeans for the farmers. So this time I wouldn't expect from China to do anything other than that, which is exactly what they did. They imposed a 15% tariff on goods including chicken, wheat, and corn. Other American products including soybeans, beef, pork, dairy products, and fruits and vegetables. They also started investigating a lot of US companies. A lot of US companies doing a lot of big business in China. Boeing, Apple, Starbucks, and a long list of other companies that you know are playing an important role in the United States. They have similarly big businesses in China, because China is the second world's largest market, even though it's not yet as big as the United States, but it's pretty close, and that actually could change in the foreseeable future. China is the largest market for American farm products. It accounts like for 17% of total US agricultural exports. China last year imported almost $20 billion in soybeans, corn, cotton, and other US farm products. So by imposing tariffs on American dairy products, it is going to crush the American agricultural industry. Whenever there is any kind of uncertainty, it is definitely going to have devastating impact on any business. You see, building a business is not something that you can just do instantly. It takes like years, if not decades, to build one successful business. And sometimes your profit margin is like 10 to 15%, maybe 20%. So when you have a government that is imposing a 25% tariff, it could literally mean that by the time you bring that product to the United States, you're no longer going to make any kind of profit from that business. So that business is going to suffer. And technology companies are going to suffer the first. So you have NVIDIA that produces GPUs, for example, but that GPU is made out of different metals such as gold, nickel, and other products. I'm not an expert in how they build those GPUs, but you have like aluminum, you have different kind of metals. And those metals are brought from Canada, from Mexico, from China. Remember what Trump is talking a lot about, the rare earth metals? That's exactly what you need in order to build those technology products. So when you have those tariffs, it creates so much uncertainty. It's driving investors away, and a lot of them are afraid, especially when you are talking about large, huge institutional investors that are investing like billions of dollars, not billions. Some of them are sitting, such as BlackRock, on trillions of dollars. So whenever they start selling a small portion of their portfolio in order to protect their investors by diversifying their portfolio so that they can invest in more stable assets such as gold that rise during uncertainty, that's why you have the market is crushing. And if you look at the GDP figures, United States needs to grow its GDP by 2 to 3% in order to make sure that it stays the most powerful economy in the world. And secondly, it needs to grow its economy to be able to afford the debt that it has, like $36 trillion, and there is an annual payment of over $1 trillion. But if you look at the GDP forecast rates now, they are not even positive. They went to negative almost 3% annually. And if that happens by next year, then the United States can possibly experience a recession and the market crash could actually worsen. But I believe that the United States will come to an agreement with Canada, Mexico, maybe not with China, it's going to be much more difficult. But with Mexico and Canada, United States must sign a trade agreement. So it might be actually be in next couple of months, maybe next couple of weeks, we don't know. But when that happens, the market is certainly going to recover. Remember, the US stock market went through way serious problems than it's right now, and it recovered. It went through the Great Depression, it went through the dot-com bubble, through the 2008 financial crisis. So if you're a long-term investor, you should not worry about that. But if you're not a long-term investor, maybe you should actually learn how to become one. So if you're new to the stock market or you want to become a far better investor than you are right now, then check the link in the description. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.